Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I'm 30 now, but this all started about a year ago with my ex, Kathy, who's 27. We were together for 5 years, but we've been close since we were kids. She was the only one who showed up to my 18th birthday party when everyone else bailed. That's the kind of history we had. I thought I knew her better than anyone, but I was so wrong. Kathy wasn't just my girlfriend. She was like family. She was there for me through a lot. Like when I lost my job a few years ago, she was my biggest cheerleader. And when my dad was in the hospital, she stepped up to help my mom while I was stuck working overtime. We even started talking about building a future together, getting married, having kids, all of that. I thought we were on the same page, but then, out of nowhere, I get this random Instagram message from a girl named Lisa. At first, I thought it was spam, like one of those fake accounts trying to sell something, but when I read it, I felt sick. Lisa said she had proof that Kathy was cheating on me. At first, I didn't believe it. I mean, Kathy cheating? It just didn't add up. But then Lisa started sharing details that were too specific to ignore. She claimed Kathy had been seeing some guy named Roger for a while, and had even told him she was pregnant. That caught me completely off guard. Kathy hadn't said a word to me about being pregnant, and that just didn't add up. The whole thing felt off. Who was Lisa, and why was she telling me this? I asked her straight out, "How do you know Kathy, and why are you getting involved in this?" Lisa replied that she wasn't a close friend of Kathy's, just someone who knew the truth. That didn't sit well with me. Why would someone go out of their way to expose someone else's relationship unless they had an agenda? Was Lisa just trying to stir things up for fun? Or did she have something against Kathy? She told me she was a friend of Roger's and found out about the affair after snooping through his phone. Apparently, she'd seen enough of Kathy and Roger's messages to piece everything together. Lisa claimed she felt bad for me and thought I deserved to know the truth. But was she really being altruistic, or was there something else at play? Her timing seemed too perfect. She reached out to me out of nowhere with screenshots and even a video. It was hard not to question her motives. I messaged her back, saying, "Okay, you've got my attention. Show me the proof." Part of me was hoping she'd back off or admit she didn't have anything concrete, but she didn't. Instead, she sent a series of screenshots, texts between Kathy and Roger. These weren't just friendly messages. They were explicit, graphic even, things I couldn't unsee. It wasn't just painful, it burned. Still, I wasn't ready to fully buy into Lisa's story. Screenshots can be faked, right? So, I pressed her further. "Why are you doing this?" Her response was blunt. "Because Kathy's been playing you. Roger's an idiot, and Kathy's not as innocent as you think. Someone needs to tell you the truth." Then Lisa lost it and sent me a video. It was Roger laughing with his friends, talking about how he'd been sleeping with Kathy and how she told him the baby might be his. My stomach turned. I didn't want to believe it, but the way Roger was talking, the smug tone in his voice, it felt too real to ignore. Even with all that, I still couldn't shake the feeling that Lisa might have her own agenda. Why now? Why me? Was she doing this to help, or was she just trying to hurt Kathy? I asked her one last time, "What do you get out of this? What's your angle?" She didn't sugarcoat her answer. "I'm tired of seeing Kathy and Roger get away with their crap. You seem like a decent guy, and you deserve to know the truth. Do with it what you want." At that point, I didn't know what to think. Lisa's story made sense, and the evidence was overwhelming, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just a pawn in someone else's game. Was Lisa telling the truth, or was she just trying to ruin Kathy for reasons I didn't fully understand? I saved everything she sent me, the screenshots, the video, her messages explaining how she knew Kathy and Roger. Even if I didn't fully trust her, I couldn't ignore the weight of the evidence. Each screenshot chipped away at the Kathy I thought I knew, and every second of that video forced me to face a reality I didn't want to accept. I stared at my phone, my mind spinning. I wanted to throw it across the room and make it all go away, but that wouldn't change anything. I kept scrolling through the messages, hoping for something, anything, that would make sense of it all, but nothing did. The Kathy I thought I knew, the one who'd been my partner and my safe place, wasn't real. She'd been lying to me, sneaking around with Roger while pretending we were building a future together. And Lisa, whoever she really was, had exposed it all. Whether she was a friend, an enemy, or just someone trying to stir things up, I couldn't ignore what she'd shown me. It didn't make the betrayal hurt any less, but at least now I knew the truth, or at least, I thought I did. Kathy was out visiting her parents when all this happened, which gave me time to think. I packed up her things, everything she'd left at my place, and put it in the trunk of my car. I wasn't sure how I'd confront her, but I knew I had to. There was no way I could pretend everything was fine when she got back. Later that evening, She returned, all smiles, acting like nothing was wrong. She hugged me and said she had some exciting news. She told me she was pregnant. My blood boiled. I had to fake a smile and act thrilled, even though everything inside me was screaming. I suggested we go out to celebrate, and she thought it was a great idea. Instead of celebrating, I drove her to her parents' house. The entire ride, Kathy kept asking why we were going there, and I just told her, "We'll talk when we get inside." I needed her mom there, because I knew Kathy would try to deny everything, and I wanted a witness. When we walked in, Kathy's mom glanced up from her phone. "This is a surprise. What's going on?" Kathy, still caught up in her delusion, spoke up. "We have some big news to share." I shook my head and cut her off. "Nope, not the news you're expecting." Kathy turned to me, confused. "What are you talking about?" I stared at her. "I know, Kathy. About Roger. About the texts. About the baby." Her smile instantly faded. "What are you even talking about?" she asked. Her mom leaned forward. "Who's Roger? What is he saying?" Kathy started scrambling for an explanation. "He's misunderstanding something. It's not what it sounds like." I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the screenshots. "Not what it sounds like. Then explain this. Or better yet, explain why your boyfriend's bragging about sleeping with you and getting you pregnant. Make it make sense." Her mom shot up, her face filled with shock. "Kathy, is this true? Don't stand there lying to me." Kathy started tearing up. "It was a mistake, okay? I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "A mistake?" I let out a dry laugh. "Kathy, you carried this on for 2 years. 2 years. You don't just trip and fall into a 2-year affair. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." Her mom's eyes narrowed. 2 years, Kathy? What were you even thinking? And this Roger? Is he the father? Kathy wiped her face and mumbled, "Yes, but it's not what you think." I snapped. "It's exactly what I think. You've been lying, sneaking around, and now you want me to pretend none of this happened? Be your backup plan because he bailed? Absolutely not." Kathy threw her hands up in desperation. "I'll fix this. I'll do anything. I'll get rid of the baby if that's what it takes to make things right." Her mom started yelling. "What are you even saying right now?" I shook my head, disgusted. "Wow, Kathy, that's your solution? You think you can erase all of this, and we'll just go back to normal? You really think I'm that stupid?" Kathy stepped toward me, pleading. "Please, I love you. I can't lose you." "You already lost me," I said coldly. I grabbed the bag of her things I had brought with me and shoved it toward her. "I don't want anything of yours in my house." "We're done," I said, my voice cold and final. Kathy's mom stepped in between us. "Wait, let's talk about this. Maybe we can." "No." I cut her off. "There's nothing to talk about. She made her choices. I'm just here to make sure you know the truth. Now you can deal with her." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. I drove home in silence, my mind reeling as everything I thought I knew seemed to collapse. When I arrived home that night, I sat in my car, trying to process it all. Kathy's tear-streaked face, her mom's angry yelling, and the panic in Kathy's eyes when I showed her the screenshots. They all replayed in my mind, like scenes from the worst movie I'd ever seen. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe properly, and for a moment, I thought I might lose control. But I didn't. I stayed still, numb. Eventually, I forced myself to get out of the car and into the house. The silence inside was deafening, a quiet that was louder than any noise. Kathy's things were gone, packed up and taken to her mom's, but the emptiness felt different. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of a life I thought I had built. 5 years of memories, plans, inside jokes, and dreams, all shattered in an instant. I walked into the living room and froze. The couch caught my eye, the one where we'd spent so many nights binging bad TV shows and eating takeout. It felt surreal, like the space no longer belonged to me. The house was mine, but it didn't feel like home. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, Kathy's face, her tears, and her desperation haunted me. I kept wondering how I didn't see it coming. How had I missed something so huge for 2 whole years? By the time morning came, I felt like a shell of the person I once was. I checked my phone, and it was flooded with texts from Kathy. At first, they were standard apologies. "Can we talk? Please call me. I'm so sorry." But by the time I got to the end of the messages, they had turned desperate. "I'll do anything to fix this. I can't live without you. Please don't do this to us." I couldn't respond. What was there to say? She didn't just make a mistake. She destroyed everything. I blocked her number by the afternoon. hoping that would end it. But I underestimated her determination. By that evening, she had moved to social media, flooding my accounts with the same routine. Apologies, promises to change, begging for another chance. I blocked her on every platform. Then the emails started pouring in, long-winded messages about how she couldn't live without me, how she'd never forgive herself. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave me alone, to stop dragging this out, but another part of me refused to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under my skin, so I ignored her. Later that day, Chloe showed up unannounced. She's always been the one to step in when my life falls apart, and this time was no exception. "All right, spill," she said as soon as she walked in, her arms full of snacks and drinks. I didn't even know where to begin, but once I started, it all came rushing out. The DM from Lisa, the screenshots, the video of Roger, Kathy's confession, and everything that had happened at her mom's house. Chloe sat there, her face going from disbelief to pure anger. 2 years, she shouted, nearly dropping her drink. "And you had no idea?" I shook my head, bitterness rising in my chest. "She played me like a pro," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Chloe's protective side kicked in immediately. "She doesn't deserve a single second of your time. You know that, right?" she said, her voice firm. I nodded, but it didn't make the ache in my chest any easier. Chloe stayed for hours, helping me work through everything and cracking jokes to lighten the mood. By the end of the night, she was even joking about changing the locks, just in case Kathy got any ideas. The next day, I called my mom. I'd been dreading that conversation because she'd adored Kathy for years. She'd always called Kathy the perfect match and couldn't wait for us to get married. Breaking the news felt like admitting I'd failed somehow, even though I knew deep down it wasn't my fault. When I showed her the screenshots, she just stared at them in silence for what felt like forever. Finally, she spoke up, her voice soft, almost as if she couldn't believe the words she was saying. "She cheated," she said, and I nodded, unable to meet her gaze. After a long pause, my mom shook her head. "I can't believe she did this to you, to us." That last part hit hard. Kathy wasn't just my girlfriend to my mom. She was family. My mom started venting about all the effort she had put into building a relationship with Kathy. It was clear she felt betrayed too, like Kathy had let the whole family down. In the days that followed, Kathy's messages slowed down. Maybe she was finally getting the hint, or maybe she was just regrouping. Either way, I didn't hear from her directly, but the drama wasn't over yet. One night, Kathy's mom called me. Her voice was heavy with embarrassment and regret. "I'm so sorry for what Kathy did," she said. "I raised her better than this. She's devastated. You know, she knows she messed up, but she's still my daughter, and I have to ask, could you at least talk to her?" I sighed, already exhausted by the conversation. "I appreciate you calling," I said, "but there's nothing to talk about. She didn't just hurt me. She destroyed everything we had. I can't come back from that." Her mom sounded defeated. "I understand," she said softly, though I could tell she was disappointed. After we hung up, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief that I'd stood my ground, and frustration that the people around Kathy still thought there was a way to fix things. There wasn't. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. Breaking up with Kathy was tough, but the hardest part was finding out that some of my so-called friends had known about the affair and didn't tell me. They had been sitting in the front row to my betrayal and chose to stay silent. It wasn't just Kathy who had stabbed me in the back. It felt like a whole group of people I trusted had turned against me. I discovered this bit by bit after the breakup. One friend, Sam, slipped up during a conversation a few weeks later. He casually mentioned how he'd always thought Kathy and Roger had too much chemistry. Too much chemistry? What the hell does that even mean? I pressed him, and it turned out he had seen them getting a little too cozy at a party months before I found out. "You didn't think to tell me?" I asked, my voice sharp. "I didn't know for sure," he stammered. "I didn't want to stir up drama if it was nothing." I didn't buy that excuse. If the roles had been reversed, I would have told him in a heartbeat. It felt like everyone had decided I wasn't worth the honesty. It wasn't just Sam either. Several mutual friends admitted they'd heard rumors but didn't think it was their place to get involved. Their silence felt like another layer of betrayal. If that random girl hadn't messaged me out of the blue, I'd probably still be raising a kid that wasn't mine, thinking I was some stand-up dad while Kathy kept sneaking around with her side guy. Fast forward a year, and I was finally starting to move on. I was beginning to feel like myself again, hanging out with friends who actually cared about me, focusing on work, and even dipping my toes back into dating. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable, and I was okay with that. Then, out of nowhere, Kathy messaged me. The first time was just a simple, Hey, can we talk? I didn't even open it. I blocked her immediately. Whatever she had to say, I didn't need to hear it. A few days later, though, she showed up at my door. I saw her through the doorbell camera before she even rang the bell. I won't lie, she looked awful, a far cry from the Kathy I used to know. She was a mess, and part of me almost didn't recognize her. I didn't open the door. I didn't even step outside. I spoke to her through the camera. What do you want, Kathy? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked directly at the camera, her eyes welling up. I just need to talk to you, she said, her voice cracking. Please let me in, she pleaded, her voice trembling. No, I replied flatly. You've got no business being here. Say what you need to say and then leave. She started crying, which, I'll admit, made me feel a bit uncomfortable. Then she told me that Roger had ghosted her. Apparently, he vanished shortly after their child was born, leaving her to handle everything alone. To make matters worse, her parents had kicked her out, saying they were tired of cleaning up her messes. I don't know where else to go, she sobbed. I thought maybe you could help me. That was it. Any pity I had for her vanished instantly. Help you? I repeated, my voice thick with disbelief. You want me to help you take care of the kid you had with the guy you cheated on me with? Are you serious right now? Please, she begged. I don't have anyone else. I stared at her through the camera, struggling to process the sheer audacity of what she was asking. This was the same woman who lied to my face, betrayed me for 2 years, and now expected me to fix her life like nothing ever happened. Kathy, I said, my voice cold, you made your choices. You chose Roger. You chose to lie, and now you're dealing with the consequences. That's not my problem. It hasn't been my problem since the day I packed your things and drove you to your mom's. She cried harder, but I wasn't moved. You need to leave, I said firmly, and don't come back. Don't message me. Don't call me. As far as I'm concerned, you don't exist anymore. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at the camera, like she was waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she finally walked away, still sobbing. After she left, I sat down on the couch, my mind racing. Part of me felt guilty for being so harsh, but another part of me thought it wasn't harsh enough. What did she think was going to happen? That I'd open the door, hug her, and agree to play dad to Roger's kid? The audacity was unbelievable. Over the next few days, I kept expecting Kathy to show up again or send someone else to beg for my help, but she didn't. Instead, I started receiving messages from her friends. One read, Kathy's struggling, and you won't even help her? Another one said, you're really just going to abandon her after everything you two had? I ignored them at first, but they kept coming, each message trying to guilt-trip me into taking her back. They called me heartless, selfish, and threw every insult they could think of. Some of them even dragged up our past, claiming I owed it to her because of all the years we'd spent together. But here's the thing, Kathy wasn't just someone I dated for 5 years. She was the person who betrayed me in the worst possible way. She didn't just hurt me. She shattered my trust and made me question everyone around me. I didn't owe her anything, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel otherwise. By the end of the week, I had blocked every one of her friends who messaged me. I didn't have the energy to argue with people who clearly didn't care about what I'd been through. If they wanted to support Kathy, that was their choice, but I wasn't going to be a part of it. That chapter of my life was over, and no amount of guilt-tripping was going to pull me back into it. But Kathy didn't stop. Neither did her friends. After she showed up at my door and I shut her down, it was like a switch flipped. They doubled down, flooding my socials with messages. They called me names, threw guilt trips at me, and tried everything to break me down. One message said, "You're such a coward for leaving Kathy when she needs you the most." Another one said, "You're less of a man for not stepping up." The entitlement in their words was mind-blowing. Some of Kathy's friends even started leaving nasty comments on my work profile, where I'd shared some professional achievements. That was the breaking point for me. I started documenting everything: screenshots of messages, voice recordings of phone calls, even the fake accounts they were using to harass me. It was exhausting, but I had a feeling things were going to get worse before they got better, and I wanted to be prepared. And I was right. Kathy found a way to complicate my life even further. One day, while I was sitting at my desk at work, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. On the other end was a man who introduced himself as Kathy's lawyer. I froze for a moment. Kathy's lawyer? What could she possibly want now? I asked him to get to the point. He said Kathy wanted to discuss a child support agreement. My jaw nearly hit the floor. Child support? For a kid that isn't even mine? I told him flat out that there had to be some mistake. I'm not the father of that child, and Kathy knows it. The lawyer paused, probably surprised by my directness. He asked if I'd be willing to meet to sort things out. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I figured it was better to handle this head-on rather than let it drag on. So, I took the afternoon off and agreed to meet him at his office. When I arrived, he greeted me politely, but it was clear he didn't fully understand the situation. He started with the usual lawyer spiel about responsibility, how Kathy was struggling as a single mother, and how stepping up would mean a lot for everyone involved. I let him talk for a while, but when he finally gave me the chance to respond, I didn't hold back. "Let me stop you right there," I said, pulling out the folder I'd brought with me. Inside were all the receipts, screenshots of Kathy's messages with Roger, the video of Roger bragging about sleeping with her, and copies of every harassment message I'd received from her and her friends. I laid them out on the table, one by one. "This is the truth," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Kathy cheated on me for 2 years with Roger. She got pregnant with his child and tried to lie about it being mine. When I left, she and her friends harassed me for months. I've got the proof right here." The lawyer leaned forward, flipping through the evidence. His professional demeanor shifted to discomfort as he got further into the pile. By the time he reached the last page, it was clear he realized he was on the losing side of this fight. But then, as if he wasn't already struggling enough, he added, "Kathy mentioned something else. She said you were emotionally abusive during the relationship. That's why she's struggling to make ends meet now." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with disbelief. He avoided eye contact as he repeated. "She claimed that part of the reason she reached out for support was because your behavior during the relationship left her without a safety net." I let out a dry laugh. "So let me get this straight. She cheats on me for 2 years, tries to pass off another guy's kid as mine, harasses me when I walk away, and now she's spinning some story to make me look like the bad guy? The nerve." He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly regretting bringing it up. "Look, I'm just relaying what she told me," he said. I grabbed my folder and stood up, giving him one last look. "If Kathy or her friends keep this up, I'll make sure their lies come with legal consequences. This ends now." The lawyer nodded, clearly rattled. "Understood," he said, gathering the documents into a neat stack. "I'll need to speak with my client about this." "You do that," I said, walking out of his office without looking back. In that moment, I was furious. Kathy thought she could drag me into her mess, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. I kept replaying everything the lawyer had said, and the sheer audacity of it all was infuriating. I couldn't let it go. Against my better judgment, I grabbed my phone and called Kathy. She picked up almost immediately, her voice cautious but annoyingly sweet, like she expected me to cave. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to talk," she said, her tone like she was trying to soften me up. I didn't bother with small talk. "Kathy, what the hell is this about child support?" I snapped. "I just got out of a meeting with your lawyer, and I want to know what kind of fantasy world you're living in where you think I'm paying for your kid." Her tone shifted instantly. "Look, I didn't know he was going to reach out to you like that," she stammered, clearly caught off guard. "I'm in a really tough spot, and I thought maybe—" She trailed off, realizing how ridiculous she sounded. "You thought maybe what?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You thought maybe I'd just roll over and be your safety net after everything you've done? Let me make one thing clear, Kathy. That kid is not mine. I don't owe you anything, no money, no time, not even a damn text back. You made your choices, and you don't get to drag me into your mess just because Roger bailed on you." I could hear her breathing shakily, trying to keep it together. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said quietly. I don't have anyone else to turn to. My parents won't help, and Roger's gone. I'm doing this all on my own." I let out a cold, bitter laugh. "And whose fault is that, Kathy? You cheated, lied, and tried to pass off someone else's kid as mine. And now you're coming to me because you're out of options? That's not my problem. It hasn't been my problem since the day I walked out." I heard her start crying, her sobs sniffling through the phone. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I didn't know what else to do." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I replied flatly. "You need to stop. Stop calling me. Stop sending people after me. And stop trying to manipulate your way into my life. You don't get to come back from this. We're done, Kathy. For good." I ended the call before she could say anything else, tossing my phone onto the passenger seat. My hands were shaking, but not from regret. No, it was from the audacity she had to even think I would entertain her nonsense. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had truly shut the door on her and everything she brought into my life. And damn, did it feel good. A few days later, I received a formal letter from her lawyer. It was short and to the point. No further attempts at contact from Kathy or her friends. He also mentioned that Kathy had decided to move to another city to start fresh. There was even an apology included, though I doubted it came directly from her. When I read the letter, I didn't feel victorious or triumphant. I just felt relief. The chapter with Kathy was finally, officially closed. No more messages, no more harassment, and no more lawyers trying to guilt me into taking responsibility for a child that wasn't mine. The drama had quieted down, but rebuilding trust? That was the real challenge. Every time I met someone new, the thought lingered. What if they're hiding something too? But I wasn't going to live in paranoia. Kathy had already taken enough from me, and I wasn't going to let her take my future as well. I focused on what I could control, hitting the gym, throwing myself into my work, and spending time with people who actually cared about me. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. One night, while I was out with some friends, Matt asked, "Are you back in the game yet?" I smirked and replied, "Not even close." "Come on, man," he said, rolling his eyes. "Not every woman is like Kathy. Don't let one bad apple ruin the whole bunch." I didn't commit to anything in that moment, but his words stuck with me. He wasn't wrong. I wasn't going to let Kathy's betrayal define the rest of my story. A couple of weeks later, Chloe invited me to a party. "No pressure," she said. "It's not a setup. Just come hang out, relax, and have a good time for once." I almost bailed, but something told me to go, and honestly, I'm glad I did. The vibe was chill. No awkwardness, no expectations, just good people. That's when I met her. She wasn't flashy or trying to impress anyone. She was just real. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe around someone. Am I jumping into something serious? Not yet, but I'm open to seeing where it goes. For now, I'm focusing on myself, but it feels good to know that not everyone is like Kathy. Sometimes, you just have to close one chapter to start a better one. And trust me, this new chapter, it's already off to a much better start. It's been a year now since I've met someone who makes me feel like I'm really moving forward. Her name is Liz, and from the moment we started talking, everything just seemed to click. We've had our ups and downs, but she's patient, kind, and genuinely cares about me in ways I haven't experienced before. It feels good to be in something that's healthy, without the constant weight of doubt or betrayal hanging over me. But I'm not rushing anything. I want to take my time. We've talked about the future, and while we're both happy, I've decided I'll wait a full year before I even think about popping the question. I want to be absolutely sure that this is the right decision, that we're both in a place where we can build a life together without looking back. Meanwhile, Kathy's life has been, well, a mess, to say the least. She's now a single mom, raising the child she tried so hard to pass off as mine. There's still no sign of Roger. It's like he vanished into thin air the moment she needed him most. And I can't say I feel sorry for her. She made her choices, and they came with consequences. The whole situation is a reminder of just how far off track she had gone and how she tried to drag me down with her. But recently, Kathy tried to make her way back into my life, pulling the same manipulative stunt she had before. She showed up at my door one evening, desperate to talk, probably hoping I'd take her back out of guilt or familiarity. I'm not even sure what she expected, but whatever it was, she didn't get it. The thing is, this time I wasn't alone. Liz was with me. Kathy started her usual spiel about how hard things were for her, how she was struggling as a single mom and needed my help. But before I could even respond, Liz stepped in. I can still hear her words clearly. "Ben isn't your safety net anymore, Kathy. You can't just waltz back into his life and expect everything to be handed to you. You lost that privilege a long time ago." Kathy was caught off guard, and it felt damn good to watch. I was relieved Liz was there, showing Kathy what real support looks like. Something Kathy could never understand. Kathy's face twisted with anger and embarrassment, and she tried to argue, but Liz didn't back down. She just stood her ground. And when Kathy realized there was no point in trying to manipulate me, she left. It felt like a weight was lifted. I could breathe easy knowing that Liz had my back. It's not just about protecting myself anymore. It's about protecting the future we're building together. Kathy's chapter in my life is long over, and nothing's going to change that. Not now, not ever. I'm not about to let her or anyone else drag me into her chaos again. Now, with Liz by my side, I'm moving forward. I'm not looking back. I know where I'm going, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. But this time, I'm doing it right. And if I ask Liz to be my wife a year from now, it'll be because I'm sure. Because we've built something solid, something real, together. That's the kind of commitment I'm ready for. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.